So as Katherine said, my name is Jennifer Yessis, and I'm the Associate Director of the Professional Graduate Programs in the School of Public Health Sciences at University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. And Katherine is a Senior Educational Developer, Integrative and Experiential Learning Center for Teaching Excellence, and really just has been so supportive, and part of the reason that I have been able to, I feel like I've come so far, and it's all because of Katherine. So in Ontario, Canada, it's now common practice to be reflective about the history of the land we're working on, because although we're settlers on the land, we were not the first inhabitants. And I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that the University of Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land granted to the Haudenosaunee peoples of the Six Nations of the Grand River. Now, while that may be so, it really wasn't the British's land to give in the first place. And over the last number of years, we have been on a journey to understand the impacts of colonization to the Indigenous people who were displaced from their land, homes, and culture. Oops. So just to provide a bit of an overview of today's session, we're going to provide a little bit of context, share a bit about the course that we're talking about. Katherine's going to share a little bit more about the student-led, individually created courses reflective framework, which I'm sure some of you have also adapted and used and developed. We're also going to share a little bit about our use of PebblePad in the course for three things: e-portfolio, individual workbook using the adapted SLIC framework, and for peer review. And we are going to share the impact of using the SLIC in this context from a light grant where we were able to study it, and provide a little bit of time for questions at the end. So in the Capstone course, first of all, to back up, we're talking about the Master of Public Health in the School of Public Health Sciences. This is primarily an online course, but there are 2 points in time when students come together in person. One is for the beginning of the program, and one is at the end. The course we're talking about is the culminating course for Masters of Public Health students. And students in this course complete a capstone project, and it's part of a group for a public health client. So the students are preparing a product, but as part of it, they are also demonstrating the process through an adapted SLIC. So they need to demonstrate synthesis of important public health competencies. And part of the reason for that is that we are also an accredited program by the Council on Education for Public Health. So in addition to it being important for them to demonstrate these competencies, it's also a requirement for accreditation. So a few other pieces of to note, this is a spring term course, but initial contact with the students is in the winter term. And the course is primarily online, but the students do come together for 1 week of in-person sharing. And just to let you know, this year, that was last week. So the students last week were in person in Waterloo sharing their learnings in presentation format.
So I just wanted to take a moment just to tell people a little bit about the SLIC framework. We have been adapting it since about 2020 with so much support from the University of Edinburgh, Simon Riley. I don't know how many people were at his session yesterday, but just to give you an idea of what the SLIC framework is I like to think about it as a self-directed learning framework. It's an experiential learning, reflective, and self-evaluation framework where the course structure is removed. And what happens is the instructor provides the learning outcomes sort of in broad strokes, and then the student proposes a project or a set of activities that they believe will help them develop these learning outcomes that the instructor has set or they have set for themselves. In addition, they give a plan on how they are going to complete that project. They'll give an audit of the skills that they have and how they think those skills will help them complete this project. They'll also identify skills that they believe they'll have to develop in order to complete it and how they're going to go about developing those skills. And then they're going to also say, and here's how I know, or here's what I'm going to be looking for to make sure that I'm on track. So we're trying to get them to develop these skills for self-evaluation. Throughout, we also have them complete guided reflections so that on an ongoing basis, they're starting to collect evidence, which tells us that they're on their way to documenting or whatever the competencies and the learning outcomes. And so as such, it's a really good framework for students to start practicing being self-directed in that volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world that they're going to be encountering when they graduate. So it's really something of a co-creation of a course. So in this particular one, what we did was we adapted the SLIC framework, and we did that by actually having the students start documenting the evidence that they had contributed to this group project, and also trying to incorporate peer feedback. So as Jen had mentioned, each group is going to be creating a group e-portfolio. They're going to be talking about their project overview. They're going to be talking about the group contract that they have created in order to assess this. They'll also be doing group presentations and a written report. If we go to the next slide, we can see what the pages look like over here. The students have to share this project with their peers so that they can get feedback on it. And on the individual side, the way that we adapted the SLIC framework was to increase that individual accountability. So even though the students are all working on a group project, what each individual student had to do was say, here's what my contributions are going to be for that particular project. Here's the aspect or the lens that I'm going to be looking at this group project through because that's personally meaningful to me. And here are the ways that I am going to be able to document what I have contributed to this. So the workbook is guiding them through the ways to do that. Go ahead.
Okay.
What we wanted to know was what impact does incorporating this have on our student learning? And so we decided to compare two cohorts of students. So we had the 2021 group, which had not integrated the SLIC framework, and we compared that with the reflections from the 2022 group, which did have the reflections. We're still collecting that data through interviews and the comparison, but today we're going to be presenting what we had found on the 44 reflections we've analyzed. We have 27 reflections from the SLIC group compared to about 17 reflections from the non-SLIC group.
And since that time, we've also added students who've been part of the cohort since that time. So we even have more students from that. And we're still analyzing some of those data. But these are the four themes that really emerged. That one is that students demonstrated an improved ability to recognize their transferable skills, which is probably not surprising to many of you. But that's something compared to the non-SLIC group, the SLIC group demonstrated this. And I'll show you some examples. Students also displayed greater capacity to reflect and incorporate feedback from their peers because of the experience of integrating the peer feedback they got twice. As well, students' career growth and development were positively influenced as they reported, and that was sort of emerged and extracted from their reflections. And then finally, their reflections aided their growth and development as they self-reported. So the first theme, you'll see some examples of the students in the SLIC cohort. They're very specific about the skills that they learned. So they talk about, for the first example, project management skills, and then they're also able to articulate what they meant by that. And then you can see here that they talked about some other skills that they developed, and then what they meant and how it helped them for their project, and then how they'll take it to work as well. And then when you look at the non-SLIC cohort, they're talking very vaguely about applying knowledge, and it's just not as specific. And these were themes that were extracted.
So one of the things that we were glad to learn is that the students are actually using their portfolios afterwards. So in this particular case, what the student did was take her group portfolio and transform it into a career portfolio where she continues to build on it. She's continued to add evidence of her skills and proficiencies, competencies, and she's used this as she's been looking for employment.
I think it even helped her get a job in a different, like she moved to the US from Canada and she actually used it to get a job. Our second theme indicated that students displayed greater capacity to reflect on and incorporate feedback from their peers. And you can see here that they talk about the feedback they received, they indicate that it was meaningful and they were able to understand what to do with it. And that's something that sometimes it's a little bit shocking when you get feedback and you get a lot of feedback and you're not quite sure what to do about it. But the good opportunity with this course is that they integrate it and they're actually asked to reflect and then indicate how they're going to change the work that they're doing because of the feedback they've received. And when you look at the non-SLIC students, they indicated that feedback helped them with different things, but weren't able to sort of be as specific.
So as Jennifer was saying, based on the feedback, they were able to use the feedback to start enhancing their own projects and things like that before they actually passed it along to the instructor. There's a lot of expertise in this course. Many of the people come from public healthcare backgrounds, and so we wanted to be able to leverage that expertise. We wanted to also help the students provide constructive feedback. So we used the PebblePad feedback templates. And what we did was provide a checklist where the students, as they're evaluating or providing feedback, they can go through and say, yes, I saw this, I saw this. We have a rubric. And then we also wanted the students who were presenting to have an opportunity to solicit specific feedback that they were interested in. And so you can see we have responses to group questions. So if a student had expertise in that area, they were able to add that to the form, the feedback template. But even nicer was instead of releasing the individual templates as they were evaluating them, we simply pulled a report using the feedback templates. Yep, we can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
And what it does is it compiles all the individual feedback from each of the students into this nice graph. And if you go down, you can also see the qualitative feedback. So we just compiled that, printed it to a PDF, sent it back to the group. The group was able to see where people were having problems or what challenges that they had, areas that they liked. And even better, because they knew who the student was who had provided the feedback, we were starting to create this community that students could go to this person and say, oh, you've got expertise in this area. I'd really like to talk to you a little bit more about that. And we also wanted this to be a community building exercise so they can develop relationships that they carry on into their careers. So it wasn't just in the classroom.
And the other thing, well, at this stage in the Capstone course or in the program, the students are really expert in various areas. So it does give them a chance to show that expertise with the feedback. So the other theme that we extracted was that students' career growth and development were positively influenced by the SLIC model, and they were specifically talking about in their reflections about taking some of the learning from their projects, so systems mapping, and being able to integrate it into their career moving forward. And then this is sort of a theme when you compare to those that are not part of that model. It just was not as specific or clear about how they would use the information that they developed in the course to help them into their career. As Katherine had mentioned, something that was really important to CEEF, who's our accrediting bodies, the Council on Education for Public Health, was that we were able to show that individuals within the group were actually doing their part and they were actually assessed on their individual contributions. So we created an individual workbook that they would use to document their learning journey. So it increased the individual accountability. And then students were able to document and show, by attaching evidence, what their individual contributions were. They were also able to reflect along the way.
So using, as we mentioned, we used the workbook. The students were able to, we guided them along using the what, so what, now what model. We were really trying to push them to, so what does this mean after you graduate? So really transferring that. The other thing we wanted to do was have them add that evidence. So the really nice thing about this is it's a group project, but each student is learning something that's meaningful to them. So same project, same group project, but if you look at their individual workbook, you see that they're focusing on different skills, they're taking away different things, and they're able to start adding evidence of their own personal learning journey. The other thing it helped with was that skills articulation gap. We know we have the skills, but we've now started having them practice articulating and identifying those to people beyond the instructor.
And the last theme here was the self-reflections aided in their growth. And I was just, sometimes I hear things about reflections. Some students struggle with doing reflections, and sometimes I get a little bit of grumbling about it. But I just find that this was just really affirming to me, this last quote here, that, and I heard things like this from other students, that it helps them just, realize that they would like to do this in their career. They'd pick one or two things to focus on, and they'd reflect on it throughout the year. So for professional learning going forward after they left the program, which I thought was extremely valuable and encouraging. And the non-SLIC cohort indicated that, they were talking about the program more generally, but not as specifically about, what reflection did to help them. So again, here are the benefits of using this adapted SLIC. And so we did adapt it. We needed to adapt it because the students were creating the product, as I said, and that was a lot of work, but then they were also reflecting on it throughout. So the reflection was important, but so was the product. And then they gave the product to a public health client at the end. But this helped them enhanced their capacity to identify transferable skills. You were able to see the specific skills that they mentioned. It improved their ability to reflect on and apply feedback from peers. It positively influenced their career progression and development and helped them think about their future development after they leave the program. And this is we'll share these slides, but one of our students integrated their Capstone project into a career portfolio and wanted to just share that example with you. And now we could take a few questions.